Good afternoon, students. Today we will start with 18 FT 504 Quality Assurance in Garment Production. We are at Unit 4, which talks about quality assurance in apparel production. Now today we will talk in the lesson 4 about different tolerance limits and quality standards for different manufacturing processes of garments, that is cutting, sewing and finishing. So these are the important aspects in the garment industry. So how much tolerance we should give for different kinds of garment, what is the tolerance limits, and what are the different processes are involved in the garment manufacturing, and what are the quality standards applicable for them. So these are the point of discussion in the lesson 4. Let us see, students, what do you mean by tolerance first? What is tolerance? So that is the first question people will ask when they will go for this any kind of inspection or any kind of measurement, especially in the inspection area. So measurement tolerance, so when you are talking, so it is nothing but plus or minus side deviation of a particular measurement. So plus or minus side deviation of measurement is the tolerance. Okay, like a particular chart if I take, so what is the tolerance in the waist side, or what is the tolerance in the length, cuff, all these things, the measurement tolerance, basically it is talking about plus or minus measurement tolerance. Now tolerance also is having some other meaning, that is what is the allowance or what is the limit of variation, like a garment like shirt. So what is the allowable limit? Now what do you mean by allowable limit? That is also another point of discussion in a shirt measurement. Let us see that this is the figure of a shirt. So what is the allowable limit at different point of measurement that is applicable, and if we do not apply, what will happen? So all these things are the point of discussions, and tolerance limits, that's why are set, and variation of tolerance may occur also in the garment. So that time if it is too much deviation from the tolerance given by the buyer, the particular garment is getting rejected. So that's why tolerance limits are very important from the fit properties point of view in the apparel industry. Now when you are talking about the tolerance, let us see some examples. One of the examples, like if we take the chest measurement, okay, and chest is around 50 inches. Now whether 49 we can go for it, if it is 51 we can go for it or not. So that is the question, but actual size should be 50, but in the measurement, especially in the inspection, we are getting 49 and sometimes we are getting 51, whether that is acceptable or not. So that is the question here. Now this kind of variation is a tolerable variation, okay, within the tolerance of a particular buyer. So it can be accepted, not much deviation in the fit properties of the garment. So tolerance limit also plays an important role, that's why, in the fit properties. So 49 to 51 can be taken into consideration. Now tolerance, when you are talking, the question always comes in the production that whether the same size can be guaranteed. Everything is same, but all production parameters are same, but whether is it possible that one can guarantee the same size? No, it is not possible, because you see that some of the variations will be there in the production processes. Okay, so different processing stages are there by which the garment is produced. So due to that, some tolerances will be created, little deviation will be there. So same size, though same production process is there, cannot be guaranteed. Now what is the guideline then? So guideline is that whenever any kind of such productions are there, production processes are happening, so measurement always should fall within the tolerance. Okay. So any kind of measurement, any parts of the garment, it should fall within the tolerance limit. Of course, it should meet the quality guidelines also. So both the parameters one must satisfy in the garment industry. So you can see that two of the woven charts have been shown here. So there the tolerances are within the limit and both of them are meeting the quality standards. Looking alike, but they may not be the identical one. So that is the guideline. Now students, that tolerance also talks about that error if it is there in a particular garment. So what is the maximum room for error? So error can be there either in the plus side or in the minus side. Both way this error can happen in the measurement tolerances. Like the examples of particular measurement tolerance chart has been given. So different areas of garment, they are having the different errors. Okay, but how much error is acceptable? That is the most important thing in the tolerance, in the measurement tolerance what we are talking of. Now if tolerance is too high, then what will happen? Students, can you answer this? If it is going beyond the tolerance limit, what will happen? Yes, if it is going too high, okay, plus minus suppose 2 inches, then the fit properties will be changed. What do you mean by the fit property? Means the size. Okay, so each size is having their own fit properties, so that will change. So fit will be more like M or XL. Okay, so those kind of properties can change if tolerance is too high. So these are some of the examples of size chart. Okay, so in that, if tolerance is too high in the higher side, if it goes, so S size or the small size garment may look like an M size garment, and tolerance if is too low, then XL size may look like M size. So that is the difference, the tolerance. Okay. Now lower tolerance, when you are going like plus minus 0.125 inches, what will happen then? So is it the result same? So here the fit properties will be more consistent because it is very low tolerance, plus minus 0.125, very minor deviation. Okay, so it's look like identical one or similar type of shirts. So that's why the fit properties are consistent when you are talking about the error is very less, plus minus 0.125. So two cases we have seen, one higher tolerance and one is the lower tolerance, and we have seen that when deviation is more, what can happen, and when deviation is less, what is the result. Now question comes, why size tolerance is necessary? Now answer is very easy. This size tolerance is necessary because this is unavoidable in different production processes while producing the apparel products of different types, and those kind of difference or deviations from the actual measurement can always happen because the production processes in cutting, sewing, finishing, those are all different processes. Okay, different instruments, different people are handling. So all external factors are affecting the production process. So that is the reason little bit of size tolerance has to be given. Product raw material also responsible for this. So here in the sewing and the cutting, this kind of tolerances are there. Now why size tolerance is necessary? There is another way of describing it, because there is stretch or there is shrinkage in the garment, and there is 3% such kind of deviations are there after washing. So obviously the garment, different parts of the garment may shrink or stretch, and if this is within 3%, then there is no problem at all. So in those panels, cut panels, that's why this tolerance is applied, that is the 3% tolerance. So that's why washing is very important, how much tolerance we should actually give to the garment. Now let us see, students, one of the important videos of this kind of processing what I am describing, so that will clear your doubts of different processes used in the garment industry.
The construction of some garments is more complex than others. Yet the construction of a modest t-shirt and an elegant dress shirt both require careful planning to assure they are made according to specifications. As a part of this process, manufacturers must know in advance all components required for manufacture, as well as the order in which construction operations are executed. This section provides some details on those operations for constructing a t-shirt, a pair of jeans, and a dress shirt. The cutting process for t-shirts involves two separate processes: the layup and cutting of the fabric for bodies and sleeves, and the rewinding and bias cutting of fabric strips to be used for necklines and, in some cases, sleeve bands. Companies that produce fabric and also cut and sew the fabric will typically handle the tubular knit fabric in flat folded stacks. The fabric is laid in a zigzag manner during the disposal of the fabric from the last operation in the fabric manufacture sequence. These fan-fold or book-folded stacks may hold as much as 500 pounds, generally a little less than 500 yards of fabric, and will typically be moved on pallets. Depending on the wait time and distance of travel, these stacks may or may not be enclosed in cardboard or other covering. Production facilities that purchase fabric from multiple sources will frequently buy the tubular knit fabric on rolls. The practical limitation for the roll is approximately 80 pounds or yards. Consequently, there is considerable more handling required with rolls, in addition to the expense of the cardboard tubes. A vast majority of commodity t-shirt manufacturers deal with fabric knit to the finished dimensions and spread the fabric as a tube. There are some companies, especially those that have a tapered side seam on their garments, that will slit the fabric down the side and spread the fabric as an open width fabric. We will concentrate on tubular fabric spreading. Spreading machines for tubular knit-to-size garments will turn the fabric 90 degrees as it is removed from the stack and positioned on the table. This turn will position the crease, which originated along the folded edge of the fabric during finishing, down the center of the spread, which will end up being the side of the garment after cut and sew. Tubular knit spreading machines are typically designed to handle either roll goods or flat fold goods, but not both. Therefore, the introduction of fabric packaged the wrong way will cause major turmoil in a cutting room. The savings of flat fold goods is also negated if the cutting room must unroll many rolls of fabric and stack in a flat manner. This loss is due to the fact that the placement of the end of the fabric through the spreading machine and over the stretching device, threading the machine, is quite time-consuming. The spreader bars on the machine ensure that the edges of the fabric will be nearly even and allow for more precise cutting. With the fabric loaded on the sideboard of the spreader, the operator will move the machine along the table for the predetermined length of the marker. Some spreading machines are manual and must be pushed by the operator. and others have motor drives with which the operator must simply activate the throttle on the machine. Of course, motor drive machines will allow the operator to better watch for defects in the fabric. The length of the spread is determined by a combination of the number of different sizes of shirts and the total number of shirts in the cut. As can be seen in these two examples, the longer spreads are much more efficiently laid on the table, reducing the labor cost. Once the appropriate number of plies are laid up, the marker, comprised of pattern pieces, is positioned on top of the fabric, and cut lines are marked on the fabric by dusting a colored chalk through perforations in the marker material. In the case of body-width T-shirts, the resultant lines will be in the center of the spread for the armholes and curved lines at the top of the body panel for the front and back neckline. The reciprocating blade cutting knife is operated by one of the more highly paid direct labor operators in the plant. An operator in a progressive and safe facility might be wearing protective earplugs or a work glove on the controlling hand, but will definitely be wearing a steel or Kevlar mesh glove on the free hand. The cutter will typically cut the long spread of fabric into segments containing a body and one or more sleeves by cutting the straight edge of one of the pieces across the width of the fabric. The resultant block will be maneuverable and can be moved to the edge of the table for more accurate cutting. The cutter trims the edges of the sleeve and then cuts the curved top, thus removing the sleeve from the lay of fabric. The two curved lines, which will become the front and back necklines, are then cut at the top edges of the body panel. The center line keyhole is then cut, which will become the armholes when the shirt is opened up for sewing. While the body pieces are cut with a manual cutting machine, the trim fabric for the neckline and/or sleeve bands are cut in an entirely different manner. The roll of fabric is fed onto a machine at an angle. A circular knife is used to split the fabric tube and provide an open-width piece of fabric. As the fabric is cut, it is wound at the same degree of angle onto a separate roll. This roll is then positioned on a machine equipped with a circular knife, similar to a meat slicer or carpenter's saw. The roll of fabric is then sliced into appropriate width strips to be used for trim items on the shirt. The bias winding of the fabric imparts additional stretch to the knit fabric. Care must be taken to match the fabric color of the strips to shirts cut from the same shade of body fabric. The appropriate yardage must be accurately calculated to finish the cut shirts without waste or shortage of trim fabric. Now that cutting is finished, the process continues with assembling the T-shirt. A typical T-shirt is composed.
So students, we have seen that different processes what is adopted during the cutting or the different spreading operations. So different tolerances, that's why are very important when you are doing such operations. Now there is one important size tolerance is applicable for Hamilton's size of tolerance. This is very famous American shirts, Hamilton shirts. So this tolerance, that's why is very important. And as per this Hamilton's international tolerance standard, the shoulder 1/4 in each side, the tolerance is acceptable. Like this, what is shown in the figure. So Hamilton shirts size tolerance is 1/4 in each side. It again depends upon the buyer. There is also the chest and waist part. Chest and waist actually 1 inch tolerance is acceptable. So you can see that how the particular shirt will look like. So 1 inch tolerance is there in Hamilton's size tolerance. Now Hamilton size tolerance also talks about sleeves and the tails, wherein the tolerable limits is 1/2 inch. So that is sleeves and the tails. Now, Hamilton size tolerance also include collars and cuffs wherein 1/4 inch tolerance is given. So, very strict tolerance level is maintained, and this is an international shirt company of America, wherein the collar and cuffs 1/4 inch tolerance is given. Now, there is another important part of garment industry is called the miscut. Okay, that is the failure of the cutter to split the line, and there is a tolerance of miscut is 1/16 inch. So, that is the tolerance of miscut if anything happens like this as it's shown in figure. So, you can accept with the tolerance 1/16 inch. Now, matching plies, this is also another important area wherein we can check the ply, that is the top and the bottom ply. Okay, and there also some tolerance level exists. Matching plies, when you are talking, we have to compare the hard pattern and the paper marker. Okay, and there is a tolerance of 1/8 inch in the matching plies between the pattern and the paper, as is shown in the particular image. Now, there is also another kind of cutting is there, that is called the ragged cutting. What do you mean by ragged cutting? You see, this is important cutting operation in some critical parts of the garment, and this is also applicable when anybody is asked to recut. So, ragged cutting, as is shown in the figure, that is also applicable in the garment industry for different products. So, there also the tolerance comes into picture. Notches are there. So, notches location is important in the pattern, and it must match with 100%. Okay. So, no tolerance should be accepted, but if tolerance is there, then 1/8 inch tolerance has to be given in case of notches. So, these are all the areas that during the cutting and spreading stages where some tolerance levels are there to accept that product. So, we have seen that this garment construction area, which is very important and part and parcel of the garment production, and wherein the garment is getting produced, and this is produced by using some specification sheet. Okay. So, this is the figure where the specification sheet is mentioned, and here all the areas of the garments, the details are given in the pictorial forms. Even the measurement tolerances are also described here. Now, when you are talking about the quality standards for cutting, so size of the spread is important, and the side must be aligned. Okay, and there is a tolerance of 1/8 inch for this cutting or the side of the spread, as is mentioned or in the shown in the video also, that different spreads are there. So, their tolerance is around plus minus 1/8 inch. Now, coming into the case of cutting also, 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch outside of the marker, that is the tolerance if it goes outside. Okay, then this type of quality standards are maintained into this. Similarly, if we want to check the width of the material or the fabric, okay, so you have to check the fabric width against the marker width. Okay, and this is almost same as a cuttable width. What is cuttable width? As can be seen in the particular photograph. Okay, so how is the cuttable width looks like? So it is between two selvages, and there is a tolerance of 1/2 inch into that. So that is the way that fabric width and the marker width are changed or getting inspected or taking into account the cuttable width. Now, when you are talking about the quality standards for cutting, the overlap of the fabric, if it is there, exceed at least 2 inch on either side of the splice. That is also one of the standards in cutting, the overlapping of fabric. So there is tolerance of 2 inch on either side of the splice. So that is the way that room is there of adjustment for a particular garment, as is shown in the figure and the photograph, that how the spreading direction and there is overlapping of the fabric plies are there, and why these splice are there, the location of the splice, okay, where there is a overlapping. So that overlapping here as shown in the figure can exceed at least 2 inch on either side. Now, when you are talking about the cutting, the lay height also plays an important role. Okay, the different lays are there as is shown in the video also. So lay height also very important, and it should not exceed 7.5 centimeter or 3 inches, or as per the requirement of the buyer. So 3 inch is the tolerable limit for this lays height. Different lays are there, so height should not exceed that 3 inch, otherwise there will be cutting problem. Now, when you are talking about the cutting, the roll shrinkage also, as I already described to you, plays an important role. So fabric roll shrinkage against the pattern shrinkage tolerance is plus minus 1%. Okay, so this shrinkage tolerance is measured and it is incorporated in the pattern. Okay, so that is the way it is calculated, that how much roll shrinkage we should accept, okay, from the pattern. Now here, when you are talking about the finished garment, what are the different areas are important for the finished garment? Let us see. So first and foremost thing of the finished garment is the fit property. Okay, good fitting is the most important thing here. So we have to take care, patience and the practice for that to produce a good garment where the fit properties are correctly maintained as is shown in the figure, because it is the elegance, okay, it is the attire of that particular person is getting depicted by good fitting of the material. So finished garment first important property is the fit property, that's why. Now when you are talking about the fitting property, one of the very important thing in that fitting is that comfort. The body where we are wearing the garment, okay, so there moisture evaporation, itching sensations, all these things are perfectly balanced, okay, so that the wearer should feel comfortable while wearing the goods. So fit property, that's why, is very important, and it must adjust naturally and consistent with the current fashions. So that's why you have to design the garment in such a way, the fit properties, so it should be naturally fitted into the body of that wearer, and the wearer must feel comfortable with this fitting property. Now coming into the case of the finished garment, there are few important points are there which depicts actually the good fit property. Ease, line, grain, set and balance, those are very, very important in that aspect in the finished garment. So what are those properties, we will see in detail. Now quality standards of finished garments also talks about the good dressmaking, good fitting and good designing. They are the part and parcel of good dressmaking. So two aspects are combined in dressmaking of finished garments as shown in figure. Now some of the skills which are to be mastered here is the placing of the patterns properly, okay, then the knowledge of the grain in the fabric, so that should be taken into account while we are placing the material in the cutting table. So placing pattern and in line with the grain, that is very important, and for that enormous amount of skill is required. One must be mastered with it. Now here also the cutting accuracy is very important, okay, along the lines. So when the particular cutter is there, we should cut along the lines what has been marked there. Stitching and pressing darts are very important also in the finished garment. That workmanship, it talks about the stitching and the pressing also at the darts. So those things also give a lot of important properties like fit properties, elegance, okay, those things in the garment, especially in the finish stage. So that is the area actually we should look into it. Stitching and pressing darts, and cutting should be accurate. Now quality standard of finished products also include the basting by hand or by machine accurately, and stitching with the grain as is shown in the figure. So those things are the part and parcel of a good quality finished garment. So we must look into it at each and every stage of manufacturing. Now in that, ease in fullness also another important part of finished garments when you are seeing at the quality. So fullness of the garment, then shrinkage or shrinking out fullness is also important. So some of the garments require this property, the ease in fullness, okay. So those parts are very important here in the finished garment. Here also the pressing, tailor pressing is another important part. The machine stitching, we must also look into it, and there must be a proposed line and corner in that, in which line we should press the material. So that's why pressing, then stitching at the required areas, and proposed line and corners, that must be well defined in the garment when you are doing this stitching and pressing. Otherwise the fit property of the garment will be affected. Now coming into the hemming part, there are certain garments where invisible hemmings are also there, okay. We have to take care of those parts also which are not visible. So that is invisible hemming. So we must see the quality parameters of those hemmings also. Now here the making piped buttonholes are also important. Slide fastener plackets are also important. So piping arrangements are there sometimes in a decorative way, okay. So how to make that buttonholes, okay, piped arrangement. Then slide fasteners, so when you are talking, the placket of the slide fastener is also important here to maintain the finished garments. Now the finished garments, when you are talking, the applying to face and interfacing, okay, this part also plays an important role, okay, face and interfacing as shown in the figure. Setting a sleeve smoothly in the armhole, it is part and parcel of a good garment, okay. Smoothly it should be there in the armhole, okay. There should not be any crease or folds or anything there. So you have to be carefully stitching and sewing, and pressing operation must be correct into that. We must take care of. Now there are 5 basic factors which can have this good garment fit. Let us see to it. I already talked about these points. One is the ease, another is the line, then the grain, set, balance. So these are the important parameters which actually regulate the garment fit. Those are the important factors in the garment. So let us see what are those. Let us see a video now to know about the ease property.
Hi, I'm Robin. I lead the pattern development team here at Seamwork. We are a community of sewists that are all about designing and sewing our own wardrobes. Check us out at seamwork.com. Sewing is so powerful. Rather than settling for ready-to-wear clothes that don't quite fit properly, we get to create our own clothes that fit our bodies the way we want. We get to choose the fabric, the color, the size, and we can alter the patterns to fit our unique, beautiful shapes. One of the most important concepts in sewing is ease. So why is ease so important? Because it's what allows us to move in our clothes, and it affects the overall design and shape of the garment. In this video, I'm going to teach you all about the basic concepts of ease, including how to calculate ease and how to keep it in mind while sewing. Ease is important for both a garment's fit and its design. Wearing ease is what allows us to have movement in our garments. If we sewed a pattern in a woven fabric that matched our exact measurements, it would fit like a second skin and we would have no range of movement, so we add ease. Design ease is added to a garment to influence the overall shape and silhouette of the style. A close-fitting garment, like the Christina pencil skirt, has less ease. A loose-fitting garment, like the Takara knit dress, has more ease. Before you pick a size to cut, it's important to check two measurement charts: body measurements and finished garment measurements. They may or may not be on separate charts. Seamwork has both included on the same size chart. Here I have the size chart for the York. The bust measurement on a size 8 is 37 inches. The finished garment measurement is 40 inches. To calculate the amount of ease, you subtract the body measurements from the finished garment measurements. So 40 minus 37 equals 3 inches of ease in the bust on a size 8. Now let's talk about negative ease. While woven garments add ease, many knit garments subtract ease to get negative ease. Negative ease is when the finished garment measurements are smaller than the body measurements. A close-fitting tank top or t-shirt will likely have negative ease. I'm wearing the Seamwork Margot. Margot has negative 2 inches of ease in the hips. So what that means is that the finished garment measurement of the Margot is 2 inches smaller than my body measurement. You might be wondering how pattern makers draft to include ease. Each company has their own standards for the main measurement points on the body: bust, waist, hip, etc. The pattern maker will start with these standards and then will add or subtract ease to achieve the silhouette that the pattern designer has sketched out. Here are 3 tips for using ease while sewing. Tip number 1, keep ease in mind when deciding which size to cut. Do you want your garment to fit more closely, or do you want it to be a little roomier? Calculate the amount of ease for the main measurement points and keep that in mind when choosing which size. This is especially helpful for when your measurements fall between sizes. Tip number 2, you can often size up or down if you prefer more or less ease. Keep in mind that when you size up or down, it will affect all of the pattern measurements, including measurements like the shoulder width, the bicep, the sleeve length. You may need to measure portions of the pattern and compare them to your own measurements and then adjust as necessary. Tip number 3, measure your body before every sewing project. Our bodies can change and those fluctuations may affect fit or silhouette, but that's okay because you have the power to add more or less ease to alter the pattern to fit your perfect shape. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out Seamwork, where every month we share informative articles to help build your skills. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring ideas and techniques. Follow us on Instagram to stay in touch and keep up to date on all things Seamwork. Thanks for joining and happy sewing!
So students, we have seen what do we mean by ease. Okay, so it is actually the actual body measurement and garment measurements. Okay, how we are feeling it after wearing it. Sufficient room should be there in the garment when you are wearing this particular garment. So that is the ease property of the garment. Okay, so there must be some sort of tolerances again with the body and the garment, and it all depends upon the fashion, type of garment and personal taste. Okay, and depends upon the body measurements and actual garment measurement. So whether anybody wants fit property like this, skin fitting, some room should be there. So how you are wearing this easily, that is the ease property. Now ease property also talks about the construction of the garment so that it should be the right size when it is going into the wearer's body. So right size must be there, and we talk about the ease. So definition of ease or the application of ease differs from body to body. That's why. So how a person feel comfortable with that particular garment. So that is the ease of the garment. Ease also talks about a little bit of in the higher side when it goes into the excess, then it appears as a baggy appearance as it is shown in the figure. So this is called excess ease. Okay. And then similarly, too much ease, if it is there, shoulder seams, okay, or the folds, neck and chest area, or waistline is too loose. So in these extreme situations also, the garment will not look nice. Okay. So we have to be carefully handle this, then only the good fit properties we will get in our garment. Ease also talks about that any garment we are wearing, so that should not be, there should not be any wrinkles or the strain in the garment. Okay. So this is the best way to understand the ease, without wrinkles or strain in the garment. Now ease also talks about certain tolerances like a shoulder ½ inch, bust line 4 inch, this kind of tolerances normally given for good comfort properties. Now ease also talks about across back ½ inch or 3/4 inch tolerance, across chest 1/4 inch to 3/8 inch tolerance as shown in the figure. So our ultimate aim is to get a good fit property. So what are the tolerance levels are applied at different parts of the garment, that is shown here. Now same thing is applied for hips standing 11/2 inch, then skirts at waistline to fit on the belt 1 inch or 1/4 inch on each quarter. So that is the way the skirts are also getting measured, or tolerances are given in the hips and the standing positions. Ease talks about the back of the sleeve cap 2 inch to 3 inch tolerance, elbow 1 inch, bend below comfortably as is shown in the figure. So these are the different areas of the body where the ease properties is mentioned. Now line is also another important area. Silhouette, that is the lines in a garment, which describes the garment by lines. Okay. So there are circumference lines like a neckline, armhole, waistline, okay, wrist line. So this describes actually the silhouette of the garment or the actual garment designs. So at different areas as shown in the figure. Now line, when we are talking, it should be smooth without folds and neat. That is important property. And smoothly graded curves in the back and front area is applicable in the line. All these caters to the good fit property in the garment, and what are the important parameters in the line that we are describing here. Line also talks about the armhole, oval, not pointed or round in shape. So that are those are important areas or important shapes which line describes about the armhole. So this armhole is also important. What should be the shape of that? Okay, pointed armhole should not be there. It should be oval or round in shape. So those are the important properties of the particular armhole. Line also talks about the natural creases where the arm joins the body. The curved lines also too low If it is, then it will hinder the movements in hand. Okay, so there must be certain areas, actually we must always look into it, the creases, curb lines, etc. This will actually hamper the movements of the hand if it doesn't take care of properly. That's the line area. Now let us talk about another important aspects of fitting, and what is the importance of the grain to it. Let us see.
Hey y'all, Melissa from Melly Sews with you today, and today we're going to be talking about a basic sewing term, grain line. Grain line refers to how the threads are woven as your fabric is woven. Now, when you purchase fabric, you probably notice that there is an edge that has a little bit different texture. Sometimes it also has a different color, and sometimes it's printed. Those edges are called the selvages. Selvage edges are the ones that are fed through the machine as the fabric is woven. They're made of stronger threads to help keep the tension and everything else correct as the fabric is manufactured. The threads that run the same direction as the selvage, lengthwise, those are referred to as either the lengthwise grain, or you may hear it referred to as the straight grain of the fabric. And then the threads that run perpendicular to the selvage are referred to as the cross grain threads. So how does that affect the way you cut out things on fabric? In general, you're going to want to line the grain line of your pattern pieces when you're sewing clothes with the lengthwise or straight grain of the fabric, meaning it's going to be parallel to the selvage edges. And even if your pattern doesn't have a cutting layout, when you buy fabric, generally it comes folded with the two selvages matched together. So it's kind of natural to use that fold that's already there to lay out your pattern pieces. Sometimes you can get away with cutting on the cross grain. For example, if you want a pattern to go a certain direction that's printed on the fabric, but we're going to talk about what that can change. And then sometimes you want to be cutting on the diagonal. The diagonal grain line is referred to as the bias grain of the fabric. And all of these things have to do with how strong the threads are and how much the fabric stretches in any direction. So on the lengthwise grain, you're going to get very little stretch because you've got these long lengthwise warp threads on the weaving machines when the fabric is created, and they don't have a lot of give. On the cross grain, perpendicular to the selvage, even in just plain woven fabrics with no spandex, you will find just a little bit of stretch. You see how I can distort those X's just a little bit on the cross grain. These are shorter threads in the weft of the weaving, and they have more give. And then on the bias grain of fabric, that is the direction of most stretch. Look at how much I can distort and stretch the fabric on the bias. Those properties then transfer to whatever garment you might cut out of the fabric. Now, I'm using quilting cotton for my examples here, and a lot of times this is not the ideal fabric for clothing. Sometimes it works with certain patterns, sometimes it does not. But I'm using it in these examples because I feel like this is where it's easiest to see some of the differences. So on this mannequin here, this piece of fabric, which is the exact same size as this piece of fabric, this one is draped on the bias grain, and you can see that I've got my arrows going diagonally here. And you can see I've just like kind of mushed it onto the bust of this mannequin. You can see how it wants to, even without this other fabric, lay closer to the body wherever it can. And then it forms these folds here out over the bust. In contrast, we have the fabric here with the lengthwise grain running vertically down the body. And you can see, especially from the side, how it wants to hang further out over that curve. Compare that to the bias draped piece. See how that one tries to retreat back towards the body? It wants to hang further out over the body and not drape with it. Part of that is because this is quilting cotton, and part of that is because of the direction of the grain line. And let me show you, if I take this piece that I cut square lengthwise and crosswise grain line, if I move it so that I drape the crosswise grain line, you can see how there's a very subtle difference from the lengthwise grain line. The crosswise grain line tends to want to be more full, and that can have an effect on your clothing. It's very subtle, but it can be more full when you've got this crosswise grain running vertically, instead of normally we have the crosswise grain running across our bodies. Now I know somebody's going to ask, what about knit fabrics? So let's talk about that. Knit fabrics don't exactly have a grain line in the same way because the fabric is all formed out of one thread. It's not two sets of threads being woven over each other. It is one thread being looped around each other. And I'm going to link to a video below and at the end of this that explains more about the properties of knit fabrics. But when people ask about the grain line of a knit fabric, generally what they're referring to is how would you determine the same thing as the cross grain and the straight grain when you're looking at a knit fabric. So knit fabrics also generally have a selvage edge along the lengthwise edges of the fabric. And the fabric generally stretches the most perpendicular to the selvage. In other words, what would be the cross grain if this was a woven fabric, that tends to be the direction of most stretch when you're dealing with a knit. Also, when you're dealing with a knit though, depending on the fiber content, you may find that you have a lot of vertical stretch as well. This is because, again, it's just that one thread, it's being looped over and around itself row after row after row. But to review, fabric, warp threads run lengthwise parallel to the selvage, weft threads run crosswise perpendicular to the selvage. The lengthwise grain or straight grain has the least amount of give, followed by the cross grain, which has a little bit of give, and then the bias grain, which has the most amount of stretch and give.
So students, we have seen that grain, what are different features of grains, and basically the placement of warp and weft yarns are very important, and warp threads are heavier and than the filling threads. This also we have to take into account while we are selecting different grains, as we have already seen in the video what is called cross grain or the straight grain, etc. So, and how this fabric, the grains are getting managed. Now grain also, when you are talking heavier threads, the drape will be there on the figure and graceful folds will appear as seen in the figure. So heavier threads in the grain will appear as a good drape. Then grain also talks about lengthwise, that is perpendicular to floor, center, front and back as is shown in the figure. And grain can also be in the form of crosswise yarns, as we have seen in the video also, parallel to the floor, center front and center back as is shown here. So two types of grains are important here while you are producing garments. Now there is another important property that is called the set while you are describing the fit. And what is set? You can see that well fitted garment, that must be a smooth set without any wrinkles, and slanting wrinkles strained over some curves or bulges of the body. Okay, this kind of slanting wrinkles will occur like this in the garment. So we have to be carefully handle the garments. And crosswise wrinkles, that will be there circumference below them and it's fitted too tight. So that's why this wrinkle, how it is, that is also important in the garment in the set property. Similarly is the balance, okay, left to right and front to back and necklines, those areas the balance is very important. So fit neck snugly at all points in the neckline area. So balancing also is very important in the garment, and extend the distance from the center to the right and left sides. Okay, so similar kind of extension should be there when you are telling the balancing of the garment. Now balancing also talks about the shoulder seam. Okay, as is shown in the figure that two of the figures are wrong figures. Okay, and the right figure you can see that armhole where it slides. Okay, they are, both cases are wrong. Okay, one is too tight, one is too sluggish kind of thing. Okay, but the right figure is at the armhole. So shoulder seam is very important of balancing a garment. So students, we have seen the important aspects of tolerance and different properties which contribute to the fit properties of a garment. So thank you very much, students. We will see you with the next chapter in the new unit. Thank you very much.